the reason for my sleep deprivation is definitely Darkest Dungeon 2.
I knew
Yeah,
you'd
yeah,
get to it this week.
yeah. For sure, for
I
sure.
want your let's just skip the preamble. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts on because I dabbled in the first game, but
hmm
you fiended on it.
I did, and I even went and like did a little refresher run in the last in one just to get it all, you know, um, recent in the brain. And the changes are really different, and like it's clear they're trying to create a it's almost as if like this is more of a spiritual successor than it is a direct sequel.
Yeah, like it was a, Blarkest Blungeon
or
by a different company that
or
was in
like
the spirit of Darkest
well,
Dungeon.
yeah, it's like what if there was a big bunch of drama at Red Hook and then some people left and made their own product for Kickstarter, and then this is what we got, you know?
Hmm.
Where it's like, okay, you've got the spirit of it in a lot of places, but you're going with some huge changes. Um Darkest Dungeon had a lot of stuff that people found like irritating about the runs, not just the difficulty, but like there was stuff that was like sort of like extra frustrating. For example, your inventory, right? The ability to stack things was always a huge annoying problem where you'd get some really good shit that was worth it, but you're like, do I have to throw out a couple thousand gold
The answer
or
is yes.
you know? And yeah, because you can only stack so many things, and you can tell what people were interested in the most by just going to like the community tab and seeing what mods people made in the workshop, you know?
There's always something about like a game that it's complicated, and then you go to this happened with XCOM 2 the week it came out. You go to the mod page, and number one, downloaded 80 million times, is turn off the turn timers.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
you get to a point where you're like, this is the design of the game, and this is how we want you to play it. And people go, no,
Yeah,
I hate that part.
exactly.
Darkest Dungeon 1 had that with the corpses, where they actually included the toggle because it was so controversial.
Yeah. So corpses can be good and bad. That's the thing, is you can use them to your advantage, or they can be a detriment. In many cases, they're a detriment. In most cases, they're annoying. But that's one of those things that you see in the workshop. Like right away, you got mods on that. You see mods on stacking. There's like a billion things that are all like stack to the ceiling, stack as high as you want, never ever stop stacking. Every single torch, one stack. All your food, one stack. Shut up, you know? So that was something people really fucking wanted that they didn't like on the default system. And another one was the stress chance for a stress penalty versus a virtue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would get like, so the way you fill up your stress meter, and then you can you either get a chance at a virtue, or you get a chance at like getting a debilitating, like a quirk, you know?
Right.
And like people wanted it to be 50-50, but it wasn't
Yep.
50-50. It was
No, it was not.
75-25.
Which made it feel like 90-10.
Yeah, because almost always something is going to go wrong, and every once in a while it's like, oh, virtuous, fuck yeah, you know? Or like you get like one of those one of your characters ends up getting a virtue, but for the most part everything always went wrong. So people were
Mm-hmm.
like, fuck that, mod it so that it's 50-50, you know? Um it's interesting. So going into this now, you can see where they just took some of that to the ground level and went, all right, uh, you can increase your stackability for items, but you have to install wagon add-ons to do so
You have to choose, hey man, stacking is important to me.
over healing items or other things I can do. Exactly, right? I'm a big stacker. You can see where they went, hey, the I like the idea of a 50-50. Admittedly, I'm okay with that. That's fun because your stress meter fills up and it's not something you want to happen, but it's cool if it turns out for the better. In this case, that's gone, and it's really just like, if it's going negative, you know you're going to get something negative. If it's going positive, you're going to know you're going to get something positive. So whenever it has that little screen where it's just like the relationship is tested, you're like, yeah. But I know where it's going, you know? It's more just kind of like, what is it going to be? Like, are my partners going to be amorous? Are they going to be respected?
Hopeful.
Inseparable? Whatever. What is it going to be? But you know which direction you're leaning in, you know? And I don't mind... Like that's a bit more predictable, but I didn't think they necessarily needed to change it from good or bad coin flip. Like I'm okay with that. Stress as a whole has also become much more manageable. They've nerfed the shit out of that system. And it's interesting because it's still crippling, but it does not kill you, you know?
Yeah.
So back in the day, you fill up your stress meter, you get to 50%, you get one of those things I mentioned, and then you go from 50 to 100, and then you just die of a heart attack, right? And then your stress meter becomes almost more important than your life, you know, when you have a character that's freaking out. Here, it's like every time you have a meltdown, you lose your entire life bar except 2 or 3 points. So you're not on death's door, but you get dropped down to like an inch of death's door.
Yeah, you didn't have a heart attack, you had angina.
Sure. And you can then heal back up from that, and it's okay. In fact, you can pass a turn, and every once in a couple of turns, passing heals you, so you can actually pick yourself out of death's door even if you don't have a healer. It's interesting. So they made these decisions, and it makes some of that a lot easier.
I'm gonna raise my hand up on this.
Yeah.
The feeling that I got from that is that in Darkest Dungeon 1, because I don't know, like 20 hours in before I stalled out, you had the situation where unless you were using those DLCs that added like a real timer to the game, you could keep banging your head on it. And so it was brutal, but like a catastrophic nightmare loss just represented a loss of resources. Whereas in Darkest Dungeon 2, it's the end of your fucking run, start over.
Yes, but there's 2 things, right? Like they made those things I mentioned easier, but then there's some shit that changes drastically to rebalance it. So those mechanics improve in a way. Plus, and this is huge. Every character and every class you're using has the choice between 5 abilities, not 4. That is massive, because originally you had to pick 4 out of 8 possible moves per character, and now you're picking 5 out of what looks to be like 12 or so. Tons and tons of choice. So you can do a lot more. You can have a much more well-rounded party, a healer that can actually fight and all sorts of things. So you get more options. Yay, again, a little bit more easy. But 2 things happen. One, you no longer get the ability to use items from your shared item pool in battle.
No, you gotta equip them.
Only one. And after you use that one, it's done. And that...
Hopefully you put the right one on.
So you know based on the area you're in what you probably want, but you can't be prepared for everything. And that makes it really hard, because now you're like, oh fuck, I don't have the ability to fix this blight, this bleeding, this fire, like you run out of the resources to fix that in fights sometimes. Whereas before you always had a lot, like the full list of options to fix whatever problem you came across. So that makes it harder. And 2, you can't fucking run away. Escape is gone. And that is a huge thing, is if you run into a fight in DD1 and you lose a really crucial, like your leader or your healer, and you've got nothing to make up for it and no firewood.
You just take a real bad crit.
You lose a dude, and then you go, all right, we're out of here, and you escape the dungeon, and then you suffer a stress penalty for escaping, you know? Here, escape is fucking gone. So when one goes down, you might still make it. But if two go down in a fight, you're probably fucking done. You know? And like so I ran into a couple of really interesting situations where it's a futile run. It's completely worthless. I'm down to the grave robber alone, but she can use absinthe to heal herself, and she's surviving on death's door constantly. So this fight is going up to like round 17, and she just won't die. But there's nothing you can do. You can't escape the battle. It turns out that like the harder and the longer you fight, the more hope you get. So it's worth it to keep fighting no matter what. You get incentivized in that way. As we talked about, the hope is your permanent upgrades and things like that. But while it's completely different, it's super fun. I really like fantastic. The fact that it's like you have more options on the field, but like less ways to back down, I'm okay with that, you know?
I think that's one of the reasons they put in the turn timers on your average random battle. So you pretty much have to take them all out within 5 turns.
Yes.
So it's like, if it's going real bad, it's going to end in 2 turns from now. Just hold on until then.
But also, you get no rewards, which makes that fight suck because, you know, you're just losing resources and stress over nothing. You might have reversed a couple of friendships and relationships, which are so important now. But also, like, I'm what am I? Probably like level 12 or so. Like, I'm multiple runs deep, and I have not, like, keeping a relationship positive is almost impossible, right? Like,
it's rough.
It's pretty fucking hard to keep everything on the up and up. And you see that in terms of like the game has these moments where you get into fights and then you can choose between who's going to speak, whether they're going to say something like emboldening or cowardly, and like that will affect other people's relationships. But sometimes you're like, we're about to die. We're all like on like high stress. We're all on low life. We cannot survive another fight right now. We need to move on. But if someone says, hey guys, we should back down, everyone's going to hate that guy, you know? So you're like, it's the right choice to make to run away from the fight, but everyone's relationship inverts because of it, you know? And so you're like,
why'd you got to say that, dude?
So you basically can choose between stress, resources, and how much your party likes each other, and like you get to pick 2 out of the 3.
I ran into these situations where I'm like, oh, there's a supply point, there's a friendly band of people. I'll be able to get some lantern light because I got nothing, right? I got no lamp. And then I get there and like 2 guys are like, oh yeah, sick. Let's help these guys out. We get some lamp. And then the 3rd guy is like, let's rob these fuckers. I'm like, no, what are you doing?
Yeah,
what are you doing? Now you're causing a fight for nothing. Now we're all going to argue over this for nothing.
Or better, you have no light at all. You're fucking on 0. You come across the survivors, and both two out of 4 party members are like, yeah, fuck them. Like, we, you know, and let's just take shit, and we don't want light. And you're like, this sucks, you know, or let's leave or whatever, and you have no options. So yeah, the randomness is always there, no matter what your circumstances are. But the actual combat is fucking fantastic. It's a really fun way to return to the game system and in style. Of course, the visuals we've talked, like you've mentioned, it's like, yeah, it's impeccable, super beautiful game.
It's the kind of thing where like fighting game players tend to actually zone in on this type of animation work because they have to, because of the way active frames work. But I don't see it talked a lot in a lot of other circles. Darkest Dungeon 2 is going to be the absolute like point to example of what you mean when an animation has a hit stop, when it has an anticipatory movement, when it has a like a cooldown movement, and when it has a keyframe, because it's the bluntest. It's pure anticipation then one keyframe,
Yes.
then the cooldown animation.
So in Killer Instinct, Jago's overhead represents the most important normal in the era of rollback, because Jago's overhead is he holds the sword back and then it takes like a half second and then he snaps it on you, right? And because there's so much anticipation in the holding back pose that if rollback occurs during that, you don't feel it. It's a completely invisible moment where the game can detect which input you're holding, roll back, and you won't notice a change, and then bam, it'll be one or the other, and it'll be a flawless experience in your netcode, right? Visually going hand in hand and working together. That attack is what everything in Darkest Dungeon 2 feels like. You got that wind up, that setup, and then boom, explode into the keyframe, and then the unload, the unpack. It's so smooth and nice.
I hit him really hard. Time to put the shake my hand and put my sword back on my shoulder.
Have you unlocked the new class, the Runaway? Did you try them out?
I didn't play it much outside the day that I streamed it.
Okay, so there's a new class called Runaway. And it's this girl that has like she uses fire a lot, and she has like a poker and like a chain with like a flame on the end. And a lot of her shit is just like spinning the flame into position, and like it's such a cool thing when you click on the attack and get ready for it, as she basically spins it into different positions again before she positions to strike or to backdash and stuff. And it really like the old classes are like looking better than they used to, but the new one is like built for this, you know?
Oh man, I'm looking at this Runaway character. I got footage of her. Man, this character looks cool.
She looks really cool. Unfortunately, she's not as useful as I wanted her to be. but
it's early.
Yeah, I have to figure out what else she's got going on, which gets me to actually the next point, which is when you go through these maps and you have the spread that is like Slay the Spire. Right now, it's almost unfair in the priorities of your caravan, because as you uncover different things to go to, you can go pick a fight, you can go get resources, but there's only one thing that really matters that you're gunning for every time, and that is the backstories of your characters.
It's such a massive power jump the instant you get those new moves.
It's crazy. And of all the encounters you can get to, like, fuck going to a store, fuck going to a hospital, fuck even a watchtower where I can see everything. I mean, that helps me find the backstories. But you go to the backstory, and then you pick one of your characters, and you get one of 5 chapters that are excellently narrated and, like, awesomely presented, where you go back into their past, and you either play a chapter or just listen to what happened to them, and then unlock another move of those 12 permanently for that class on your save forever.
And most importantly, like, some of them have fights depending on what chapter.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have fights depending on what chapter. But even if you do fight, they're flashbacks, so they don't take any resources.
Yeah.
And you get something out of it. It's one of the only places you can arrive that is just a universal, positive, good thing to get. There's no downside.
You get good story, you get new moves, and like the flashback fights are like them playing with the system. Like you like there's a couple. Anyway, I don't want to spoil any of them, but like some of them like create. For example, there's one where there's one of the characters fucking like just lost and fucked up and did some bad stuff, and then like has to come back, and then they're in a fight where your options in the fight are, your move list is grovel and apologize. And you have to deal with a bunch of people in front of you in a combat situation, you know? It's really interesting how they play with that stuff, you know, and then you unlock more moves. And yeah, you just kind of like, if you know which classes you used to play that you liked, you know who to hammer on to get to the good shit. You know you want to get that point blank shot with the Highwayman. You know you want to get your Hellion leveled up so you can get breakthrough. You know, so that's nice to see all the old familiars and classics. And yeah, having the 5 abilities is a nice, like, I feel like it's opened up my my options. You know, I feel like I'm using, yeah, like you're less constrained, so that's nice. Now the game is not without its flaws, and that's because it's certainly early, and I have more than a couple. First and foremost, that cart feels like shit.
Yeah, you remember me talking about it last week?
Supremely so.
You have a bunch of options. Like, you have a 3 sliders, I think, that controls the movement of the cart, and there's nothing you can do to make it feel like anything other than garbage.
So you can change the cart sensitivity to high or low. Making it go as high as possible for me helped a little bit. It made it more responsive, but I honestly just want the feature gone. I understand that they kind of wanted to include, like, they could have just made click to your next map point, right? But they wanted to include something of the walking through the dungeons in the old game.
Right.
And in this case, this is how they do it. Now,
they want a cooldown period after a big stressful event.
And that's all right. But what I would say is, at the bare minimum, just take away this clunkiness of it and make it so that it auto runs, and if you want to steer left or right, just use the mouse, and whenever you get to a fork in the road, click on one of the 3 forks you want to follow. You know? Yeah. Just let you, because you have the auto run there, and that's nice. But like, if you just auto run and ignore everything, then you're missing items on the road that you might want to collect. So now you're incentivized to keep steering in this awful system. And then when you get to a fork in the road, if you're not paying attention, you might accidentally choose the wrong one. Just let it stop and just pick which way you want to go, and then we're done. You don't have to think too hard about this. It feels like shit, but fortunately, it's an easy fix. You know.
I'd be good with it being automated.
Yeah, automate it, and then let me pick which road to travel down. You know, of course to fully automate it would then mean people would just want to skip it. Which, yeah, I guess you can just do. But like, they want to have that cooldown sense of travel, exactly. So do something, but as it stands right now, it feels awful to steer. Sometimes, because the way it looks, the horses veer to the left, thus the cart veers right, but you're at a fork in the road, so you think like you picked the wrong direction for a second, and it's poor. It's not working out. It looks great, it feels like shit, and you have to do it constantly. That needs to be the biggest addressed thing. Second part about that is, so going back to the first game, I remember I mentioned you could play the entire game with a mouse except for one thing. Selling items required you to hold shift.
Huh.
Everything else is mouse only. And I like that, seeing as I can sit on a couch without a keyboard on my lap and just play casually, comfortably. I enjoy that, you know? A lot of games I was like a lot of the games I played actually had that. When I got into the Breach, when I got into Bumbo, like, all these things were just like mouse only. And in this case, yeah, you don't need the keyboard for one fucking thing. Here, they now make it so that you have to control the keyboard with WASD, and they make it so that you can't pull the pause menu up unless you press escape. There's no button to click on, you know? And then there's a bunch of other things where it's like the only way to see some of the icons that are the only way to know what a buff or a debuff is, you have to hold Alt. So now they've made the keyboard more essential, but it's still like, this doesn't have to be the case. You can just quality of life these things away.
You should get one of them MMO mice, and then you can just map all your keyboard to your right hand.
Well, that is exactly what I did.
Oh my god. That was a joke, Willie.
No. So I have a mouse that has 3 different side add-ons to it, and I'm using the second one that has 6 buttons. So I have 6 buttons on my thumb, and the first 2 are left and right. The second 2 are up and down, and then the last 2 are Alt and Escape. So now when I play, I double tap the W on the button. and then the cart auto rolls, and then I just tap the left and right first buttons to steer the cart left and right. I don't need the keyboard. It completely eliminated the need for the keyboard by using one of those mice. But it doesn't change the fact that the game should have a built-in system for this that doesn't require this.
Do you have like some kind of moral like issue with keyboards? Is there like I've seen you use a keyboard, you didn't seem upset.
No, but I have a tactile keyboard that has wires plugged into it, and it's just annoying to have to pull it up from where it is with wires on both sides of it into my lap. It's just it's kind of cumbersome, you know, and the way the stream setup is over there, especially, it makes my life a lot easier if I can just use a mouse. But this has been the case long before, you know. If you do have one and it's there, that's cool, but it's a game that doesn't need it. It's some easy fixes to avoid, and there's no need to increase this dependency. For example,
here's what they really need to do. They need to get fucking controller support working in that thing right away, because I bet that steering shit is going to make a lot more sense when you're playing it with an analog stick.
I imagine it would. The ability to like soft turn, perhaps, you know?
Well, because sensitivity as an option makes a lot, like, it's like, I'm still just holding down digital A or digital D.
Yeah.
And I'm having to time it instead of just being able to go to the left or right with my thumb.
But there's some shit where it's like objectively, no matter how much no matter whether or not you think you care about the keyboard being involved or not, right? That could just be a me thing. But the old game had a candle in the corner you could click on to bring up the escape menu.
That is a little weird that that's not there.
And now there's nothing there. That's just objectively worse, right? For the state they're rolling it out in early access. So taking feedback, I really hope they return things that used to be there, like a pause button that you can click on. You know, it seems really strange that's just nothing you can do. Furthermore, the decision, it's a mixed bag, but the decision to change the way moves are explained when you highlight them or when you click on them is now it's better and worse at the same time.
I didn't notice any changes, but I'm not that super familiar with the first game.
So the first game, when you highlighted any moves or when you highlighted an enemy, what would happen is you would see a little pop-up window with a full description of like what it affects. Bleed resistance goes up. You cause bleed on the enemy or on your target. You see the positioning. You move back by 1 space. It'll give you a crit percentage, and then you know, these are the various things, right? And it spells it out, and then it'll in some cases describe like you know, full party heal or whatever the case is,
right?
You know? What they decided to do is they're looking at it as like, let's simplify what people are looking at when they highlight any moves, because they don't want to have too many words and make it seem too complex. So they've turned it all into icon language, right? And that helps make things take up less space.
Like a lot less space.
But it means there's a lot more icons that you have to, that you better be used to or familiar with. And sometimes you can highlight them. In most cases, you can highlight to see what that icon means. But in some cases, you can't, right?
There was a moment when I was streaming it where I got something, I forget what a move, and it interacted with it says increases whatever against, and then it was a symbol of a blue shield that had a crack in it.
Exactly.
And I was like, I don't know what the fuck that's saying to me.
Exactly, right? Now, to find out what that is, in most cases, you would have to press escape because there's no candle to click on, then go to there's a token glossary that shows you the 30 or so tokens that you can be afflicted with, right? And these are good and bad, included dodge tokens, defense tokens, protection, etc., vulnerabilities. You see a list of them, but not every icon the game uses is in that list, right? Some are only in like a particular attack when it's directed at an opponent, and some are in places where you can't, like sometimes there's you'll highlight an item or a trinket, and it'll say gives 20% to something, but you can't click on that trinket to then go find out what that thing is. You just have to like recognize it, and if it's on the list of the tokens, then you'll see it there. But there's some that weren't, and you're like, okay, then I don't know which icon this is. Plus, there's
the specific thing that I ran into was I was like, oh, what's that? So I hit G, which is the glossary button, right? And I hit G, and I'm looking at all the blue icons.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the
Exactly.
icon that was mentioned. And all I could intuit is that icon I was seeing on the tooltip was the generalized category icon for that whole batch, which wasn't there, and I'm like, just put the fucking thing down. Just write it. If you're going to use symbol language, please, god damn it, put all the symbols in there.
Yeah, so, and then on top of that, so the G key will pull that up, sure, but then the Alt key is necessary on other screens to get details on the other set of icons that occur only in pre-battle exchanges. So when you meet a bunch of people to help on the road, when you meet a bunch of people before a fight, and like there's a number of circumstances that can change, you see them underneath your characters, and in that case you need a different set of it's defined with a different button, and you hold up that information, and it'll say, oh, this will give you plus 15 to your fire, it'll give you these key resources and a couple other things, trinket chance or you know, quirk chance or something like that, at which point you're like, well, it's just adding a single line of text above those things. Why not just have that already there always? You know,
we talked about this before, about people like starting a brand new game with the first week it comes out and going, nah, this needs to change. I'm thinking of the stacking in Darkest Dungeon, you mentioned, turn timers in XCOM. But the one that I see very commonly across multiple games is the mod Better or Expanded Tooltips, which is you like say a lot of CRPGs have this mod where you mouse over something and the description will be does a moderate amount of damage to and it's like nobody wants to know how much it does on the fucking sliding scale of subjective qualifiers. I want to know that it does 19 to 22 times 3 damage in a burst.
Yes,
fucker.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I can see a toggle for this in Darkest Dungeon 2's options eventually that is literally just expanded tooltips, and then you mouse over it, and a big fucking box comes up that shows all the numerical data and uses words for all of these fucking things.
Fortunately, most of the time, Darkest Dungeon 1 and 2 will specify the number of hit points or healing points you're going to get out of something. But in some cases, you're going to equip an item that heals a moderate amount, and it doesn't tell you what a moderate amount means. You know,
that was one of the they're doing that in not Darkest Dungeon, Dead by Daylight. Every single add-on that you could equip to a survivor or killer had language like significantly decreases cooldown time when equipped. And there was no number on any of it, the whole history of the game. So you'd have to go to a wiki, you'd have to go to some guy's YouTube who would run calculations on it. It was a total mess. Apparently they're finally changing that, or have just changed it, to tell you what the fucking percentage increases and decreases are.
Yeah. Don't worry about it is not a good design philosophy in most cases, especially if it matters a lot to, you know, like the outcome of whether you can fucking, if that's the right move to do or not, you know?
Well, yeah, my favorite is in Dead by Daylight, you'd equip an add-on that says, it says slightly increases the range of your, let's say, lunge. And you'd be playing with it and you're like, I can't tell the difference. Is there a difference? Is this broken? Like, I legitimately can't tell. And then you see some guy's channel where they fucking do the testing, and they're like, it increases your lunge range by 0.017%. So I guess it's not a lie, and it's
Yeah. So that's currently something that's pretty annoying, and and what also is happening, and again, there's benefits, there's pros and cons to this, but the decision also was clear. Like, I can tell that the designer of the game, the UX, the person responsible for the user experience, looked at the HUD of the first game and went, "This is too cluttered. This needs to stop," and they basically threw it all out and took it back to brass tacks.
They said, "Listen, fucker, there's a lot of text on this screen, and that's going to be really hard to fit onto your iPhone when this gets ported to it a year from now." Okay?
Yeah, right? Because old game, you had your 8 moves or your 4 moves, right? And then underneath that, you had the extra information. And then you had, to the right of that, all your inventory or the map. You'd have to switch between 2 tabs. And then next to the right of that, you'd had the enemy information and what their moves would be and what they could do to you. And so it was admittedly a lot. And I get that, like, that was cluttered. And there's ways to do that better. But what we got now is, now you only have your moves and, like, very little information in terms of just, again, like, it's all icons, all minimal, all really simplistic, things that just add extra time to you figuring out, like, what am I looking at? What is that? What is that icon? And then in some cases you're talking about, like, oh, this will make it better on a touch on a phone screen. But there's icons where if there's 2 little swoops, that means this enemy has a 50% chance of dodging whatever you do. But if there's a 3rd swoop on this tiny little icon, it's actually a 75% chance. And
each swoop is 25%.
And I'm looking at that and I'm like, I can see that fine, but I'm sure there are people out there, if you just want to talk about, like, accessibility, where, like, these icons are not distinct enough from each other. One of them is
I have a 75-inch television, and my wonderful fiance sitting in this spot playing House of Ashes last night could not tell where a monster's arms were on the screen.
Jeez, yeah.
When it took up the whole screen.
Yeah.
Like, these kinds of changes to anyone other than having good vision is impossible to see.
So the shields are insane because there's 3 little guard icons that can appear, and they're 3 little golden shields. And the difference is one shield has 1 like stroke around it, and then the other shield has 2 strokes, and then there's one with 3, and it's like you're just, at a glance, they're the same fucking icon, guys. And they're only appearing very tinily next to the attack or underneath the character, and you can't get any information from that. So, like, on the one hand, yay, let's clean it up and let's make it visually nice and remove all these elements. But on the other hand, you have this problem of, like, you're not communicating this game effectively enough, and the game system has not changed in a way that means you can ignore this information. It's as vital as it always was, but now it's more obtuse to discover / to figure out what it is. And you've added more, because burn is now a status you can be afflicted with,
Like burn is a status.
Yeah, there's a bunch of shit, So that needs to fix for sure. The visual, the user experience, the visual language of the icons, like, communicating what they are right away. And it wouldn't take that much extra space to just write the word, like, of whatever the status is. You abbreviate it anyway in most cases. So they really, that needs some fixing for sure. Yeah, that's my biggest complaint. The replacement of campfires to inns feels really nice. I like it. It works out well. I feel like at the campfires, you would always be like, how do I spend these points before we go to sleep for the night? And you might get ambushed, which, I didn't mind that system for sure. But here, because you spend a bit more time at the inn prepping every step of the next leg of the journey, it feels much more like a real downtime, So that's a great choice where Everyone's sitting around the fire. Okay, play some games, play some darts. Some of you guys can eat some food, do some boxing.
Box a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and then deal with their stress levels and their possibly. Can we get you guys to hate each other a little bit less? Can we get the hatred down? You know?
Oh man, you know, just thinking about this, I'd like. There's two thoughts that popped in my head that are very tangential to this, but I've never talked to you about them. You played a good deal of Yakuza 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's decision was to switch around what red and blue mean when you equip something in
Oh
the
my
menu
god.
should go to hell.
Oh my god, that was brutal. My brain was fighting every step of the way of like, red bad, right? Red bad? No, red good.
Beat that game and still, like with hours to go, was still having to go like, wait, which is it? Yeah, okay.
Hey guys, purple means healing and green is poison.
Oh,
Green is the
good.
color of poison and
Well, that
purple
makes
means
sense.
healing.
Green's poison and purple's a nice color because I like purple. So
Yes.
yeah, good, done. Everyone's gonna understand that.
Oh man, especially when you're trying to like fit into a genre as like a joke almost, you know, an existing thing. Yeah, you don't get to change the rules. You've come in too late.
Do you remember an interview about Bulletstorm way back in the day where they were trying to shake things up in the first-person shooter? By the way, I like Bulletstorm. That's a good game. And they made the decision early on to make exploding barrels a bright green in that game.
Oh man, that's coming back now. Yeah,
and did months of play tests, and there was nothing. They could get. There was nothing in game. There was no tutorial. There was no voice acting cue. There was no situations they could force on the player that would get people to shoot green barrels. It just didn't happen.
Unbelievable. Yeah, no, it just like sometimes you come up and you're like, I am a fan of doing original things, but some design elements where you're pushing up against the grain on an established mechanic, you're gonna have a hard time no matter what.
Linguistic shorthand cannot be changed in a vacuum. Like you can't just decide. Like, yeah, there's a decent, I want to say it's a Rasputin video in which they discuss the use of purple in games and how purple near universally means corruption or poison or whatever. And the reason for that is because purple doesn't really occur in nature very often. So it's going to necessarily clash with almost anything in a naturalistic landscape and stick out and go, this is different. And then you throw some ooze on it, and bam, poison. Everybody can tell from a glance that that's poison.
As opposed to the color of blood or the color of nature, you know?
Hey, what color's your health bar?
It's fucking green.
No. It's red.
Okay,
well, almost everything.
Well, no, it depends. Because
it turns from green to red.
Or yellow. Oh, boy.
Yeah. we're gonna have a health bar where your health is blue, and people are gonna spend the whole game going, why is my magic going down when I'm getting hit?
Yes, exactly. Right. It certainly does depend. It certainly does depend. But sometimes you get it green, sometimes you get it red, sometimes you get it yellow in fighting games, and then it changes colors. But regardless, yeah, that's a very clear thing. You know, hey, I'm playing this game, and every time you attack something, the numbers pop up off of the enemy. Those numbers are the speed of the attacks you're using, actually. Now
hey, Wooly, let me ask you a question. You're playing a game in which numbers pop off the enemy. You hit the enemy, and the number is white. What does that mean to you?
Wait, the number is white?
Yeah, it's just a regular, like, off-white, white when you hit the enemy.
Okay, it depends on every other number. If a ton of numbers are popping up and they're all one color, and then suddenly...
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Then that's a normal attack. Then that's a normal attack.
Okay, and every now and then, a number will pop up that's yellow. What does that mean to you?
Crit, probably.
Right. And what does the red number mean? A big crit, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's how Warframe does its numbers.
Yeah.
And everyone just instantly understands, oh, okay, that's, yeah, right.
And if a green
14
number
does
pops up, uh-oh, I'm healing you.
14 just has the number stay the same color, but a crit has an exclamation point at the end of the number. And what's called a direct crit makes the number twice as big and puts 2 exclamation points at the end of it. There's no confusion. There's absolutely no way you can see a giant floating number with exclamation points on it and go, I wonder what that means.
It's the speed. Yeah. No, so you just this language stuff is important. You do have to acknowledge it, admittedly. But anyway, yeah, the inns are a really successful change to the system, and I, on the one hand, like, I feel like I feel limited because the stagecoach right now only has, like, I only have one healer, and it's Paracelsus, the plague doctor.
Occultist.
But I'm looking for no. So the occultist.
She not the occultist?
No. It's the plague doctor.
Oh, okay, my mistake.
But the occultist is, for me, the last class I can free up, and that would be my other healer option, which is going to take a while. So I feel more limited in my parties, and my expeditions are like. I kind of want to get there a bit sooner, you know. On the other hand, the old way where you had a cart of random people to hire, sometimes you just got unlucky and you just didn't get what you wanted. You just had to make do.
This caravan's a bunch of losers, man.
Yeah, you know. So now you've got to fucking make do with what you got, and. You know, like, I wanted a houndsman, but I couldn't get one, and you know. But on the other hand, now I can never get that occultist in my runs until I finally unlock it. So I always have to use a plague doctor, and that's like, I want to mix it up, though. You know,
that's a lot more like a classic roguelike, which is just like, learn to use your basic tools before you get your fancy guns.
Yeah, I guess, right? And you start the new run and you get your pick of you get your specific team configuration that you can build out. So I made it to the mountain. I made it to the mountain once and got wiped and went like, got it. This is the darkest dungeon, truly. And It feels as if, like, the speed at which you can make it there and get through it, yeah, it's going to be a lot faster this time around. It's going to be a lot easier, like you said, that 5-hour experience. Probably even shorter, honestly. Unless there's, like, some new shit that unlocks after you get deeper inside of it. You could do that in almost, like, 2.5 hours. You could get through a solid run.
So, by the way, I have to correct myself from earlier in the week, in which I said that getting to the end on your first run is probably impossible. Literally, I think that day or the day after, November 4th, so that would have been Thursday, a Dead by Daylight streamer that I follow named Otz Darva literally just posted a YouTube video of my first run in Darkest Dungeon 2, in which he beats the fucking thing in 5 hours and 17 minutes.
That's incredible. On the first run? Wow.
Yeah. The dude's a fiend. He's just real good. And what happens is that you pass through the mountain only to end up back at the level select in that void.
Yeah. And then you get to chapter 2, for sure, or something.
Yeah, so it looks like that's the way they're going to do it. Well, you'll have to beat the first chapter to unlock the second, then it'll continue. To go
Denial, and then whatever else comes next, you know?
So it'll still be a plenty long game. It will take at least 25 hours to beat.
If you want to get all of those runs done, sure. And it's funny because I was curious going into it. I'm like, the best thing about your game is the narrator, and what are you going to do going forward? And the answer is, yeah, Wayne Jude is just gonna be here. He's the voice of Darkest Dungeon, and he's not going anywhere. And you best believe the Ancestor has more things to say.
The Ancestor happened to be pals with the Scholar, and he sent him a letter before he died in the intro of Darkest Dungeon. And that letter just happened to be like 1,000,000 words long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it managed to just correctly guess every conceivable event as it happened with context.
Yeah. No, it's too powerful a voice for him to ever not be there. It's insane, you know? So super glad to have him back and doing all these new line reads. Really, really good ones. And like some of the old classics, you know, was Singular Strike and stuff that are back. But I'm waiting to hear some of the new quotables. But yeah, no. So but I've in my runs I've done or I've unlocked Jester and Hellion and the like I said the Runaway class. And yeah, no, it's just I'm definitely gonna like lose myself in that for a while. And then whenever the next update comes and erases all my saves, then so fucking be it. The Epic Game Store still sucks. Whatever.
Yep.
Is what it is. But Darkest Dungeon 2 is fucking great. It's fucking great. And you know what? I will say this. If you are someone who liked the first one, there's a lot to like here. But even if you didn't, you can still pick this one up and play it, and it's quicker to pick up and get into, and it
is a significantly different game.
It's a streamlined experience, right? This is a much simpler thing, where beforehand the foray going out, there's a lot more planning to do. Like, so much of the game took place before you even went out in DD1, and then like thinking on the fly. And in this case, they take away some of that and they make it more like improvising as you go and dealing with what you have. But like there's less to think about and more to just like play actively. And the fights are fucking hard sometimes. You know, sometimes you just get a shit deal where you hit 0 and now you enter the fucking abyss and you're fighting the Shambler right away and you've got like no resources whatsoever. Other times, you know, you get a character who's constantly making themselves stealth so you can't target them. But also, if someone dies, there's a resurrector on the field, and you've got like 2 turns left. It gets into some fucking really hard situations, which is exactly how the old game used to be. But it's a simpler like pick up and play, you know. So I definitely think grab that, touch it, play it, and get in there. I do hope they address some of those things, and I do hope we get like the relationship system is better than the old stress system, but I miss some of the old because this is so different. You know?
Well, luckily Darkest Dungeon 1's still there.
Sure is.
I think is like legitimately the actual answer you would get from somebody on the dev team.
Yeah.
Like I read an interview in which they were very clear that they wanted DD2 to be a non-replacement game. They didn't want to invalidate DD1.
They succeeded with that.
So I gotta ask, you played DD1 in early access a good deal, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did I ever talk to you about the state of dice rolls in Baldur's Gate 3?
You must have when you first broke down that early access run.
Way long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the more interesting things about early access is how willing the developer is to compromise on their vision, right? If players universally go, yo, this sucks, you can either go, but that's my vision, or you can capitulate. So I remember Darkest Dungeon 1 when it came out. I don't think it had that corpse toggle, and I think corpses came with version 1.0 because I remember people right when version 1.0 of Darkest Dungeon came out complaining like crazy that, dude, I love this game, I supported it all this time, and this corpse thing is totally ruining it for me.
Really?
And they eventually put the toggle in. Yeah, there was a lot of anger about that.
Corpses are they're an extra degree of difficulty, but they can be tactical, right? Like,
Right.
I have a Hellion in my front row, and I have her with a buffed up Iron Swan, which is an attack that goes front row to back row, which means corpses holding something in the back row is good for me when that turn comes around. You know?
I get that, and I don't personally mind, but at the same time, I can understand that like people who have been playing the early access build for 9 to months to a year and had learned how to like it, didn't like the change. A lot of the stuff that you're complaining about in Darkest Dungeon 2, like it's going to depend on like how true they want to stay, like the tooltips, right?
Yeah.
If they're just put their foot down, it's like, no, this is the way that this is better. You guys are wrong. And the reason why I mentioned Baldur's Gate 3. Oh, sorry, after you. I keep talking too much.
I was just going to give a side tip just for anyone that if you're having trouble with that. The Grave Robber, go to one of her flashbacks, and the first ability you get when you do one of her memories is a corpse destroyer that heals you. So you get pouches of lie every time, and pouches of lie will destroy the corpses. But pick Grave Robber, memory 1, destroy corpse, get like 33% healing back.
That's pretty good.
So it's fantastic.